All right, it's Ryan Berry with Rewind Studios, and I've got Missy Shay, Melissa Shay. If we want to start, it is, let's see, what is today? Today is the 14th. So it's November 14th, 2025. I'm recording in Urbana, Ohio. Missy is in Tip City, Ohio. Missy, if you want to start by stating your name and then spelling it for me, please.
Okay, it's Missy, Missy, or Melissa, Melissa, Shay, Shay.
And let's start with your parents. Who are your parents?
Schultz and Pauline Estep. And Schultz was actually the doctor's last name that delivered him. So that's how he ended up with Schultz.
Nice. And tell me a little bit about what you remember about them. What comes to mind when you think about your mom and dad?
Well, my dad didn't have a stranger. Like he talked to everybody. I could go into a store and people would come up and say, "Is your name Missy?" After I got married, because he had showed everybody in Kroger my wedding photos and they recognized me, the employees. And then when he passed away, we actually got flowers from the employees at Kroger's.
Wow.
So my dad was a very outgoing. I'm a lot like him. My mom was a little bit more reserved unless she was with family. Dad once took a red wagon out of somebody's trash that was all rusty and everything and sanded it down and painted it a radio flyer wagon and walked around the neighborhood giving away. He had a huge garden, favorite thing to do. He would give away all his extras, walk door to door, ask them if they want to pick something from his wagon. So he was just that kind of guy, very involved in church. He actually helped build the church building that he came up from the South. Several people came up from the South, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, and they started a church here. So the very first church that I went to, which was Springfield Missionary Baptist, he actually helped my uncle build that building. And the uncle was my mom's cousin, not his.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah. And then my mom, she was, I don't know, she was very funny. She had a very good sense of humor, but she was more reserved in public. Unless somebody was talking specifically to her, then she could get pretty, pretty crazy. Um, she was very artistic as far as crafty. Um, she could figure out ways to do things. If she had a problem with something, she would like figure out some unique way to take care of that problem. Like she had a window air conditioner because they didn't have central air. And I remember one time going over there and she had these little ribbons tied around it on the cord, the electric cord. And I said, "Why do you have ribbons tied to your electric cord for your air conditioner?" "Oh, well, I sprayed them with Raid because ants were crawling in." So she had all these little bows on the electric cord, but it was to kill ants before they got in her house.
Genius.
And I mean, just really unique things. I went over there one time when she was older and she had taken an old piece of a garden hose and duct taped it to a spoon because her arthritis was acting up and she couldn't grip the spoon. So she made the spoon fatter, like to hold on to. But that was the kind of person she was. And then she
Genius.
also like made bedspreads and curtains and, you know, anything like that she could do.
Um, Tell me a little bit about what you remember about your grandparents.
My grandparents. So I I don't know why this stands out, but my mom's parents, we would go to their house the most, like spend the most time there.
And where was
Uh,
their house?
they were in Middlesboro, Kentucky, and it was Rena and Tillman Brooks. So yeah, my kids didn't get named after them. But we would go there usually sometime during the summer. My dad worked at International Harvester at the time. Um, and he had a 2 week shutdown. So we'd spend that time there and then we'd go back for Thanksgiving and we'd go back for Christmas. And my grandpa was very, very quiet, Tillman. But he would come up behind me and pat my cheek, like stand behind the chair that I was sitting in and just pat my cheek. And I don't know why that stands out so much, but it was like his way of saying, love you, you know.
Yeah.
And he was a handsome man, like tall and kind of handsome guy. And my grandmother, she was cooking all the time when we were there. They would make breakfast and it was biscuits, gravy, fried apples, you know, ham, all the things. And they would start washing the dishes and she would start mixing whatever she was making for lunch. Like it never stopped. that
Nice.
that was what I remember. Now she passed away when I was in 5th grade. So I didn't really know her as well. And my grandpa actually lived to be 92, and his funeral ended up being on the day that I was supposed to have um, a baby shower for my first Nathan. It wa They called us, they said, "Here's the funeral arrangements," and we had just mailed, like, 2 days earlier, or probably more than 2 days, a few days earlier, the, baby shower things. It was the same day, same time. I just, little things like that
Yeah.
stood out. So of course we called everybody on the list and told them the situation and postponed it. But I just thought it was really interesting that ended up being the exact same day and time. So, and then my dad's parents, my grandpa was Melbourne and my grandma was Annalie. And it's hard for me to remember all the details because I've heard stories throughout the years from different things, but he passed away when I was very young, like 4, and she had married him. He had a wife and had some kids, and she was, like, 16, and his wife died in labor having a child, and it was sorta like an arranged marriage type thing, like, "You need to marry him and help with those kids." So she did, and then she had my dad and, like, 4 more kids.
Oh, wow.
So, that was my grandma, and, I didn't really know that side as well. We didn't spend as much time with them, but I do just remember them like, you know, all coming over on Christmas Day. And after my grandpa died, she moved into a trailer in Shawnee, Tennessee. And it was just like a mobile home. And it would be packed, like full of people. And again, the cooking, cooking all day for all those people. Um, I remember her trying to teach me, I was like a teenager, about making biscuits. She was trying to show me how to make I was helping her make breakfast. And she had broken a finger at one time and so it never healed cuz they never did anything about it. So it was bent like that. And she would scoop up like flour and lard and stuff and go this much and she'd do that and I just remember that little finger being always like that. But she was trying to teach me, but she didn't have any measurements. It was like, put about this much lard in, and she'd show me. And then I remember her yelling at me because I was stirring the scrambled eggs. And she goes, "You have to stop stirring and let them cook a little." You know? So just little odd memories like that. But one of the things I remember about her is mom was always worried about me being too chubby. And she would always be like, "Now, Missy, you've had enough." And my grandma would come over and hug me and say, "You leave her alone and let her have what she wants."
She had
I
your
remember
back.
about my grandma. But when I was very young, before my grandpa died, I don't really have a lot of details. It is very vague memory. But I remember going there and they didn't have water. I mean, like they had an outhouse. They had a water pump. And I remember helping pump water. I remember helping gather chicken eggs. And I remember one time that they were going to kill a hog. And somebody there said, "Now it's going to squeal when they shoot it." And I freaked out and ran and hid under a bed. I just remember I didn't want to hear it. And I was like, but like I said, he passed away when I was like 4. So that was a very slight memory, but I
Sure.
remember that being traumatic that they were
Yeah,
killing
I
that
can
hog.
imagine.
So I remember that. Um, just I just remember lots of people, just hanging out and talking and eating and always too much food. It was
Yeah.
always that was always a lot everywhere. Um, but yeah, that's mostly what I remember is just everybody getting together and talking over each other. And
Yeah.
we didn't do a lot of gifts and stuff on my dad's side. Like, we would take my grandma a gift, but that was about it, like, as far as Christmas.
Yeah.
But on my mom's side, there was a lot more gift giving. And I remember thinking it was the most beautiful tree I'd ever seen, at my grandma's house. And when I look back at pictures, it's literally like Charlie Brown tree, like a live tree that's about 3 foot tall, standing on top of a table. And it's got, like the really old ornaments
Yeah.
and some tinsel, and it's very scraggly. But I remember thinking it was beautiful.
That's funny.
Yeah. So seeing the pictures now compared to how people decorate,
Yeah.
and it's kind of fun.
No, that's a cool memory though to be able to go back and like compare it now as a compare and contrast because as a kid your memories are always bigger than what they probably really were in the moment, but that's a cool way to be able to go back and put that in check a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any siblings?
Yes. Two sisters. So I have Sandy and Becky. Becky's the oldest. And we actually have different fathers because her father passed away a week before she was born. And then my sister Sandy, the middle child, um, she was like a honeymoon baby. And I remember my mom saying that she was born a little early. And she was so afraid that everybody would think she got pregnant before she got married. So I just remember that story, and then they weren't gonna have any more, but surprise!
Yeah.
I showed up about 7 years later. But, so mom's first husband, Becky's dad, was in the military and going to the Korean War, and they wanted to get married before he left, but mom said that they weren't it was frowned upon to marry someone that didn't have an established job, so they didn't wanna tell anybody. And he
Okay.
wanted to come back and be established before she told everybody. So she said that they wouldn't do their honeymoon until he came back because she was afraid she would get pregnant and nobody would know she was married.
Gotcha.
So they waited, and then he got back and he got a job as an electrician, and he ended up being electrocuted working on a well pump. And like I said, it was like a week before my sister was born, Becky. And mom said that they actually would bring the body to the house, and she had to like comb his hair. And she said when she changed his clothes, the nails in the bottom of his shoes were melted and his hair that had been blonde and really glossy was wiry. And she
Wow.
remembers trying to make him look good. And
Yeah.
I just like, in my mind, I can't even fathom my mom actually going through that,
Yeah, gosh.
being 9 months pregnant and having to change his clothes and stuff. Like, it's crazy, but they would have now what we call a wake is like go to the funeral home for an hour visitation. But then it would be they literally put the body in the house, and you always had to have someone stay awake while they were there. So it was called a wake.
Ah, gotcha.
That's what mom told me about. And so everybody, you would take turns sleeping because someone had to stay awake while the body was in the home as respect. So, and then she ended up telling me, like, as far as me being born, um she didn't want to have another one. She was 37, I believe, 36 or 7 at the time she got pregnant. And back then they said that was old. That was old. You don't have kids at that age. And she said she cried the first 3 months because she was pregnant. And then the doctor told her that they thought something was wrong with me. and she cried the rest of the time because she was afraid something was wrong with me.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but she said that I ended up being one of the best things that ever happened.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up at?
I grew up in Springfield, Ohio, and I've never lived more than 45 minutes from there. My dad and my uncle, who helped build the church, actually built the house that. So when my mom and dad got married, she lived in Kentucky. He lived here because he had come up to work at International Harvester, which is Navistar now, currently. And he and my uncle built the house. And when he and mom got married, they drove up here. He pulled in the driveway and said, "This is for you." And so when he passed away, she said, "We have to find a way for me to stay here." And so we've always done that. And then Sandy, when my mom passed away, bought the house so that it would stay in the family
It's awesome.
because my dad and uncle actually built it. So my uncle that I keep referencing is named Walter Brown. He's my mom's, or let's see, I'm getting this confused. My mom's cousin married Walter Brown. And wait a minute, I'm getting them confused.
You're fine.
My dad's sister married Walter Brown, who was my mom's cousin.
Okay.
So it was my dad's sister married my mom's cousin, and they introduced mom and dad.
Gotcha.
And they took dad, they said, "You got to come meet her. You're going to love her." And he knew that she had a 5-year old, Becky. And he went down back to Kentucky to meet her. And when they got there, I mean, there's no cell phones, there's nothing, you just show up. And she was gone. She had went to church at a revival. So it was a weeknight, but she wasn't home. And dad said, "That Becky was a wild one." He said, "We were trying to talk." He said, "I was sitting there trying to wait for her, and she was turning the volume up on the TV and different things like that." And so they ended up writing back and forth. He never met her that night. And they wrote back and forth and back and forth. And then the first night that he actually met her in person, he asked her to marry him. And she told him no. And so then he quit writing her and she quit writing him. And a few months went on, and they sent each other a Christmas card, or not Christmas, Easter cards. And so they started writing again, and she told him that she changed her mind and that she would marry him. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So he got turned down at first, but and she said the reason she turned him down was because he was in the military and she knew the military men were wild ones.
Very, very cool.
So he had to prove himself.
Well, it sounds like you did. Sounds like
Yeah.
you.
Yes, he did.
What do you remember about being a kid at your house? Like, what are some of the things you remember about your house?
Okay. Um Well, for a while, there were 2 bedroom well, there was 3 bedrooms, but before I was born, they changed one of those bedrooms into a little small TV room, just like with a couch and TV and rocking chair. So there was 2 bedrooms upstairs, so mom and dad had a bedroom, and then me and my sister Sandy shared a bedroom, and Becky had a bedroom in the basement that my dad framed out in the basement. I remember having the '70s shag carpet because I was born in '66. I remember it was blue and green and, yarn shag carpet. Mom had like the gold couch and all the things of the '70s. She actually was very good at decorating, like staying with the trends. Like she had one of those gold clocks above the fireplace that was like a sunburst
Yeah,
that, the mid-century modern stuff. Um, she was very good at decorating and for the time periods, and So I had a bedroom upstairs with Sandy. And then when Becky left, Sandy moved downstairs and I stayed upstairs in that bedroom. I remember that. And let's see, what I'm trying to think of specific things. Like I remember the TV room was always hot because it was
Yeah.
small and it was so hot. um, when John and I were dating, we would sit in the front living room, and they'd be in the TV room, and my dad would want to go get a snack, and he'd come up the hallway going do 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 do, like he was giving me a warning in case John and I were kissing or something.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. And then I eventually moved to the basement when Sandy left, which was a big deal in the summer because it was much cooler downstairs.
Sure.
So we all wanted the basement bedroom. And so I remember just coming home and mom would have, pots of stuff on the stove because dad worked from 3 to 11. So I never really saw him until the weekends. And whatever she made for him to eat before he went to work at 3 would be leftover sitting on the stove when I got home from school, and that would be my dinner.
Gotcha.
Uh, And he always had a garden out in the backyard. He was very like he would walk and pick weeds by hand, like his yard was his thing, he wanted it to be perfect. And he grew a kind of corn called Hickory King that is very tall, much taller than normal corn. Like it gets like 14 feet tall. And he would be on a ladder picking corn, and people would stop on the road and say, "What do you do to your garden?" Because in Ohio, they were used to this, 5 foot corn.
Yeah.
And so he was very proud of his garden. And then when he retired, he actually retired when I was in high school because International went on this big strike that lasted over 6 months, and he had enough years in to retire, and I wanna say he had over 30 years and never had a sick day. I know he never had a sick day, I'm just not sure how many years he
Yeah.
worked there. But he retired when I was in high school because basically they were pushing them like, "Hey, old man, you need to retire. Like, we need to get you out of here." And mom never worked, so not when they were married. Um, so I remember at times they shared a car, so she would go like at 11 to go get him, and sometimes if I was still awake, I'd ride with her and stuff. I remember picking him up from work, and I remember when I was little, my favorite thing in the world was my baby doll. And I always wanted to play house. So I would go out on the back porch and I would flip over the picnic table and go behind it and act like it was my house. And then if they were using the porch, I would go out under a tree and mom would put a blanket down and I would just play and play and play with this baby doll. I got it when I was like 4 years old. I have pictures from Christmas when I got it. I will never know how my parents got all the gifts in the car and all our clothes to go spend 2 weeks at Christmas in Kentucky because, I mean, I came home with a doll, a carriage that is like one of those, not like an umbrella stroller, like a big carriage for this
Yeah.
doll, and a suitcase full of clothes. Like, I don't even know how they got stuff down there and got it back.
What kind of car did you have?
Um, I remember a Chrysler New Yorker. Um, I remember a Chevy Caprice. So I got the old car when I learned to drive, and I thought I was hot stuff because it was black with red interior and had 2 doors instead of 4. And it was a boat, but I thought I was cool. That was the Chevy Caprice. But, I'm trying to remember. I'm I remember what they look like, but
Yeah.
I don't really.
Yeah,
But
I know
my
what they
dad
were.
got a car, he saved until he had enough to pay for it, and then he drove it forever, like, forever. So, the last car that he got, which was a Grand Marquis, he bought it And he actually waited a year because they had started the emissions thing where you had to pay to have your car tested every other year
Yeah.
for emissions codes. And he waited a whole year because it was every other year, and he thought that would get him 2 years without having to do it or whatever. And then he passed away when the car had 1,200 miles on it. And they when we transferred the title, they made mom get one of those emissions tests. She was so mad. I mean, she was grieving, of course,
Yeah.
but she was just like, that's just the straw that, like, set her off, and she was saying, "He waited, this is stupid." She was so upset that sh it was like 25 bucks, but it was the point that,
Yeah.
he waited a whole year to get that car so he could save that 25 bucks, and then
Nice.
I mean, he had had it 3 months, and they made her get it done to transfer the title, even though it was already in both their names, to
Yeah.
put it in just her name. So that was and speaking of that, so dad did everything for mom. She was literally his princess. She didn't work. He did grocery shopping, he cleaned, he cut the yard, he did all the banking, and she would say, "Let me do something." Like, and when he died, I had to show her how to write a check because she had never written one, and I had to show her how to pump gas because she had never pumped gas, and I told her, you have to hold the thing to make the gas flow and everything. And he passed away when I was pregnant. And I just remember I was getting ready to go to one of my appointments for the baby. So I was showing her how to pump gas. And she turns around, she says, "Okay, it's full." And she still had it pushed and sprayed me with gas because I didn't tell her to let go of it.
Oh, that's too good.
Yeah. So I know that was kind of random because you asked about the house, but
No, no, you're
just
fine. No.
popping up.
N No, I love that's the idea is, whatever comes to mind, that's what's fun to just relive those memories. What do you
Yes.
remember, when you were a kid, what do you remember as far as, like, your favorite meal? Like, what do you have anything that, like, you
Uh,
always look forward to or things that you really
yes.
love?
So when I was little, we never went out to eat because we just didn't. But we would have church. We had church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Saturday night. And as they got a little bit older and I got a little bit older, they would go through McDonald's on Saturday after church and get us 2 cheeseburgers and french fries for me and Sandy. And me and Sandy would fight in the back seat about who got the ones that fell out of the bag that were in the bottom of the bag.
Yeah.
And so that was a big deal to get a McDonald's hamburger. And then mom would cook, not, I don't know what her rotation was, but Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes in an electric skillet. It was like square and you plugged it in, instead of like stovetop.
Yeah.
And she would simmer it in there while we were at church. And we would come home and have dinner rolls and Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes. And that was by far my favorite meal. And so that was definitely my favorite. Um, she so what was interesting is she came from those families that did nothing but cook and cooked and cooked and cooked. But in the 70s, the big thing was not to do that. Like, you were up and coming if you had TV trays with TV dinners and watch TV because that meant you had a TV, you had, a
Yeah.
microwave, you had whatever. So I remember a lot of the stuff that we had, and we thought we were like, the things now people frown on
Yeah.
because nothing but, you know, fake ingredients or whatever. The TV dinner in a foil tray with a little piece of meat and some green beans and mashed potatoes and a tiny little brownie. You know, you got to pick which one you wanted. Everybody
Yeah.
could have different. And we had TV trays that we could eat on. Um, so she actually didn't cook a lot. Like, I had never had real mashed potatoes at her house. Like, she made instant mashed potatoes.
Eh,
And So, like, it wasn't that she couldn't cook, it was just that time frame, all the commercials were about women can do whatever they want, the up and coming rights of
Yeah.
the women and stuff, and, um, making it easier for them so they didn't have to do so much, and so that became a thing, is just these quick, easy meals and not home cooked stuff. So when she made that meal of the Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes, even though it was instant mashed potatoes, I was thrilled. So I remember that. And I remember the first time I talked Dad into ordering a pizza. He ordered a pizza and he got the bill or whatever, when he went to pick it up. And it was from Pizza Hut. And I was a teenager. And we had never had anything but like 99 cent. I don't even know if they were 99 cents back then. The Totino's pizzas.
Yeah.
Like, he came out of there. Are you kidding me? It was like $11 or something. He's like, for a pizza? He got so mad that I talked him into ordering pizza and it was that expensive.
That's funny.
Yeah. But then Little Caesars opened, and they don't do it now, but on their logo it says pizza pizza. And when they opened, the commercials were Little Caesars pizza pizza, and you always got a second one of whatever you ordered. So it was like $5 for a large pepperoni pizza, and you got two of them.
Yeah.
So then he started letting us have pizza. So every birthday party, every gathering, it was like, I'll get Little Caesars, which we all loved. I mean, we didn't care,
Yeah.
but he wasn't about to get any more Pizza Hut.
You don't want no fancy Pizza Hut.
No, no expensive pizza for him.
What do you remember about like your summers? Like, what walk me through like a summer day as a kid in your neighborhood. Like, what did you do? What did that look like? When there was nothing else to do, what'd you do?
Right. Okay. So my two best friends, what around the block, there was one on this side, one on this side, and I was kind of in the middle. So we all would walk to each other's houses and stuff. And we would walk up to the grocery store barefoot. We'd buy a bag of Cheetos and a glass bottle of Coke and share it on the way back. Um, I remember I was big into like getting a suntan when I was a little bit older, and I would put baby oil on me and just lay out, like never use sunscreen, just like all the damage.
Yeah.
And when I was little, I can remember like dad putting the sprinkler up and us running through the sprinkler, always got drinks out of the garden hose. Um, I would ride my bike around the block, and I had to be where mom could say, Missy, get home. And I could hear her, because if I didn't come right away, she freaked out. And I remember two times getting in trouble because I didn't get in trouble very much. But I remember two times mom lit into me because one was Sandy's fault. She had a friend that lived down the street and they were having a birthday party. And she saw me ride my bike and she said, they told me to tell you to come in and have some birthday cake. So I did. Well, apparently mom yelled for me while I was in there, and I didn't come. So she walked down there and I was in the house, and she took her house slipper off and all the way home. Don't you ever do that to me again. And then another time when I was older, I was at my friend's house, and they wanted to run to the store. And anytime they ran to the store, me and my friend would have to go in so they didn't have to get out of the car. Like her mom didn't want to get out of the car. And her mom always wanted cigarettes and milk. And back then, they let the 12-year-old buy cigarettes. So they wanted to run to the store. And I said, well, I have to call mom because this was after, like, I learned my lesson. I said, I cannot leave this house unless I tell mom I'm leaving. So I called and it was busy. So we waited about 5 minutes and I called and it was busy. And there was no call waiting or anything like that, right? And her mom said, we are just running 2 miles up the road to get milk. You'll be back." And I said, "Okay." So we go get milk, come back, we're playing, and it had been a while. And I hear them say, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell her," on the phone. I'll send her that way. Hangs up the phone and says, um, "I forgot to tell you, your mom called while you were at her dad said this, while you were at the store." So again, I was in big trouble. All the way home, I was freaking out. Mama's going to kill me. So I go around the back. Dad's outside. And I'm like, "Dad, here's what happened." "Well, just tell her. Just tell her that they want you to go in the store for him." And I'm like, "Okay." Mom opens that back door and she is ready to just, and I'm trying, "But Dad said it was okay." You know how scared I was.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I never got in trouble for anything else except for scaring her half to death. So,
What's the biggest trouble you remember any of your sisters getting into?
oh, so Becky, she was gone by the time I was like 7. I mean, she was almost 14 years older than me. So I don't remember a lot. I remember hearing stories. She would go to school in one outfit and then mom would get a call that she had a mini skirt on and she wasn't allowed to wear it. And she had changed after she got there, stuff like that. But Sandy, the biggest trouble I ever remember, and it was my fault, and I felt so bad because I was like 7 and she was like 14. I saw her bike laying at the end of the road and it scared me because she wasn't there and her bike was there. So I ran home and told mom, "Something happened to Sandy." Well, of course, after my other story that mom freaks out about anything like that. Well, it turns out she had gotten a car with some boy and went somewhere and was just going to come back and tell mom that she was at her friend's house. But mom went up there and got the bike. So when her boyfriend or whoever dropped her off where her bike had been, she knew she was in trouble. And she was in big trouble for that one because she actually did leave with a guy and it was all my fault.
Got her in trouble.
Yes. So I remember that one. I don't remember much else as far as us getting in trouble, but boy, I remember that.
Yeah. What do you remember about, a snow day? What would you do on a
Oh,
snow
no days. Um, you know, we'd go outside and just play in the snow, like
Yeah,
build forts and shovel the driveway. And I lived through like the blizzard of 76.
yeah.
And there's pictures of me in this red plaid coat with the big furry hood, and the snowdrifts are taller than me. I was 10 during that blizzard, and I remember the power went out and we had a fireplace, a gas fireplace. So we like got blankets and pillows and we all sat around on the floor in front of the gas fireplace because the power was out. And Becky was a nurse at that time and they were required to come in even though there was a blizzard. And so mom was freaking out because Becky had to go drive in this mess. Um, and I just remember that, like her having to leave freaked mom out. But I remember thinking it was so cool that we got to sit around the fireplace because they didn't really use the fireplace normally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about your first best friend.
My first best friend. So her name was Anne and she lived around the corner. Her house had a roof that was shaped like a barn is shaped. And she used to get mad at me because when we would have a substitute bus driver, I'd yell, "It's the house that looks like the barn." And she'd get mad. But we met in first grade because she didn't go to kindergarten. I went to kindergarten, but she didn't. We met in first grade and we realized on the bus that we lived close to each other. And we just kind of started hanging out and we hung out all through high school and went to all the football games together. That was, in my mind, that was, when they say the good old days,
Yeah,
that was it. Was when I was in high school, and my biggest worry for the week was who's going to drive us to the game. Like, that's your biggest concern in life.
yeah,
the heyday right there. And like I was all about I wasn't about sports, but I was all about cheering for the team and school spirit and stuff. So like back then, like leg warmers were a thing, like, the 80s. I would put I went to Kenton Ridge High School, which was brown and gold, the Cougars. I'd have a brown leg warmer and a gold leg warmer, and I'd have brown and gold ribbons in my hair and just anything I could do to. I didn't play any sports or anything, but I bought a coat, like a varsity jacket, because I wanted a coat that said Kenton Ridge.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And like I said, went to all the football games and the basketball games and screamed and yelled. And the I, re- I remember it being really cold one football game and mom trying to get me to wear a toboggan hat. I cannot mess up my hair. I'm gonna go see all the people at the football game. And I would not wear a hat, like, ever, to school or anything, because I didn't want to mess my hair up.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, so she just, as far as that friend, we then met the other girl that she moved in. I want to say maybe around fifth grade. So it became the three of us all the
Yeah,
time doing things and hanging out together and stuff.
very
But
cool.
I don't remember a lot other than I remember playing. Like I said, I love my baby doll, and she had a doll too. And we would take kitchen chairs and put two beside each other, and then two behind it, and act like it was our car.
Yeah,
And back then, the first like diet pop I remember is Tab, and her mom would drink Tab, so we were allowed to have a Tab when I was there, and we wanted to play like we were moms, taking our babies somewhere. And so we would set these chairs up like that, and one of us would ride in the back seat, and one would ride in the front, and we'd have our Tab.
nice.
Yeah, and so I remember playing house a lot with her, and then just going through all the awkward, weird middle school stuff, and
Yeah.
we we joined FHA, Future Homemakers of America. We went to competitions, and like you would cook or whatever, and they would judge you, and we took first place one year.
Nice.
Got to go to the regionals.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Who do you remember, in your family that was the best storyteller?
The best storyteller. Hmm.
Or do you remember a story that was told a lot or kinda passed down, like, things that, like, maybe is a story that you've heard a lot in your life?
Let me think about that.
Yeah.
There's so many just like weird, odd,
Yeah.
I would probably say Sandy just because she was old enough to remember more about mom and dad.
Yeah.
And like she would tell me stuff like, once when you were little, I stuck you in a trash can and put the lid on it,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and then she would be able to remember like, stuff that happened. Um, my mom's side, her sister was named Zella, and we were really close with them. That's who we stayed with all the time when we'd go for Kentucky for Christmas and
Yeah.
the summer breaks and stuff. And she would tell me stories like Zella used to do this and Uncle Pat used to do this. And so I would say probably Sandy. Sandy and I were really close. Even though we were 7 years apart, um, it was like she took me everywhere, and I thought she was the coolest because she was like a teenager.
Yeah, sure.
And so if she went to the store to get, ice cream, I went with her, and she's the one that did everything. Like my mom wasn't about having like parties and stuff. Matter of fact, she was like, she didn't really want to have any kind of baby showers or wedding showers because she said that's just like asking for a gift.
Yeah.
And she was like, it was almost embarrassing for her. So Sandy was like the one that did my stuff. So she had a surprise party for my 13th birthday and had a bunch of friends from school. And I remember like it being a really big deal that you used to be able to buy singles, little 45 records
Yep.
that had one song on it that was like a hit. She bought me the weekly top 10, and that was my gift.
Nice.
And you would have thought she gave me $1,000,000. I mean, I thought I was something with those top 10 hits, you know?
Nice.
And, she had my 16th birthday, sweet 16, and she was married at that point and had Talia, her first child. And I have pictures of like Pac-Man was the big thing in the 80s. So Sandy made me a cake that looked like Pac-Man chasing a ghost, and the cupcakes were the white dots in between. And I
Nice.
have a picture of like me and Talia with the Pac-Man cake and stuff. And she had my graduation party, and she had that at her house. It was in like in her garage, I remember. Um so that day I had this boyfriend that had went into the Navy, and I didn't know of it. She organized it with him. He flew home for my graduation party.
Oh,
So
wow.
she said, if you guys want to go hang out, like I didn't know he was here yet. And, it was like your traditional open house type thing. And there was like a bunch of old people from church eating, baked beans and
Yeah.
beef sandwiches and stuff. And she said, I decorated the basement a little so you and your friends could hang out down there if you want to go down there and hang out. And I walked down and he's down there. So it was like a big
Nice.
surprise. Um, but she was always like the one to do anything special like that. She just always felt like she didn't want to ask people for stuff or,
Yeah.
whatever.
Do you
So
remember, either your parents or grandparents, any sayings that they had or anything that they would say regularly that kinda sticks out to you?
so my mom, speaking of not having parties and stuff, well, me and Sandy are the party people. And so Becky has always asked us to help with every party she's ever had, and a bunch of people from church, we've done their graduation parties and their anniversary parties and whatever. Showers, name it. Me and Sandy were the ones decorating and cooking and planning, and we'd always go overboard. And mom would always say, now enough's enough and too much is nasty. So that's something we still say every single time we decorate for a party.
That's
We
a good
still
one.
say, now enough's enough and too much is nasty. But
That's a good
that's
one.
my favorite one that I remember.
Um, who in your family do you think you looked up to the most as a kid?
Yeah, so I looked up to him for many reasons. I mean, he was a leader in the church and just helped everybody. He was always the one that was going to go help somebody if they needed help. But I remember one time I was so disappointed because our basketball team made it to the tournaments, and it was in Troy, Ohio, which I think is so funny because now I live like 10 minutes from there. But at the time, I felt like it was, 5 hours away or something because we didn't drive yet. And none of my friends were allowed to go to the game because it snowed. And so nobody was going to go to the game. And I was like devastated. It was like February. And I was like, we're in the tournaments and we can't go. And dad had never went to a game with me because he had always worked 3 to 11. But he retired before I graduated. So he ended up being home more. And he goes, well, I'll take you to the game. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. So it was just me and dad, which we had never done anything like that before. And we drove to Troy in this snowstorm, and we stood outside, and it was like 20 degrees and windy and cold. And we're all, like, and no joke, we get to the window, the ticket window, and they look at him and they say, sorry, we just sold the last ticket. We're at max capacity. We're not allowed to let anyone else in. And we couldn't go in. And I remember being
Oh, wow.
disappointed, but still, I didn't get upset. I left feeling like I've got the best dad in the world. Like he did this for me just because he knew I wanted to go. I was like, I still feel that way every time I think about it. Just the fact that he got out in the middle of a storm to drive me to a basketball game, and we stood out there, it felt like forever in line, and then he didn't act upset either. So I think that was like, he just loved me so much he wanted to do it for me kind of thing. So that was really
That's
special,
awesome.
and I remember he didn't do it very often. Like, we weren't it wasn't like today where you got, like, toys and gifts and stuff. I mean, I was lucky if I got a gift on my birthday, not like in a bad way, just it wasn't expected back then.
Sure.
Like, they would be like, "Well, your birthday's in August. Let's go buy your school clothes," kind of thing. And I can remember every once in a while coming home and there'd be something sitting on my dresser because I never saw dad. And it would be some little something he picked up at the grocery store, like a candy bar or they used to do these specials where, like, if you spent X amount of money, you could get this for 50 cents, something.
Yeah.
And he got me the Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas record. But back then it was called Woody Woodchuck, but they still used the name Alvin in the songs and stuff. It was the
Yeah.
same, and it sounded like the Chipmunks and everything. And it was the big album with several songs, and it was sitting on my dresser. He had gotten it for me, and I thought, that was a big deal. That was a really big deal. And one year he gave me a card that was a turkey, and it said, "Happy Thanksgiving to my little buddy." And I don't know, it just always like, oh.
Yeah.
So he was just the one that I thought, if he says it, it's true. If I need anything, he's there, even though I didn't see him very much. He was
Yeah.
always, and then it ended up, when he passed away, I was the last one to see him. Um, he had never been in the hospital, had never missed a day of work. I'd never seen him sick, like, ever. And I was married and I was expecting Lydia, my second child. And mom called and said, "Your dad passed out running the snowblower. I'm calling the squad." So, okay. And then she called me back and she said, "They're taking him in the hospital." And I called John, my husband, and he didn't want me out driving because there had been snow and stuff. And so he took me up to the hospital. And I remember looking at the doctor and saying, "Do we really need to keep him?" Because it was December 21st, or it was 20th. I said, "It's Christmas. Can't he just come back for testing and stuff?" Because they were going to do a heart cath the next morning. So, "Can't they just do that after Christmas?" He goes, "No, he needs it now." And I was like, "Oh." And I just remember dad, like, I was visibly shaken, and dad, like, took my arm and said, "I've been here long enough." And he was only 72, but at the time, I was in my 20s, so I thought 72 was old. Now I'm
Yeah.
like, that is not old. And I said, "Dad, stop it." I said, "They're going to do the test tomorrow. We'll figure out what's going on. Everything will be fine." And then the next morning, we had had a huge snowstorm, ice and stuff. So John drove me to the hospital, dropped me off at the door. His test was going to be at 6:30 in the morning. So I got there at like 6:05 or something. And we were just chit chatting. I was like, "What'd they give you for dinner?" And, we were just talking. He was asking me stuff. And um, he says, "Is that heart monitor right there on?" I said, "Yeah." And it looked fine, beep, beep. He was okay. "Is that heart monitor on?" And I thought, that is weird. First of all, I've never seen dad in bed, sick, nothing, and hooked up to stuff. So I went and got the nurse, and she came in and she said, "You look fine. I bet you're just nervous about this test." And he goes, "I'm not nervous." And he held up his hand and he said, "See?" And then she goes, "Well, let me check." And she did his vitals manually. And she goes, "Everything's good." And I remember her doing this to his hair. And I just thought, my dad never needed anybody for anything. And to see a nurse like get his hair out of his face just really bothered me for some reason. But anyway, she turned around and she got to the door and he looked at me and he goes, "I'm feeling better now." Closed his eyes and flatlined, and that was it. Like, the nurse
Wow.
freaked out. Like, she cried because we had, told her something was wrong,
Yeah.
but the machine, her checking, everything was perfect, she said. And we didn't get mad at her. I mean, she couldn't, but he just
Yeah.
looked at me and goes, "Yeah, I feel better now." Closed his eyes. And that was it. And I was the
Wow.
only one there. And I walked out because they were going to try to shock him and stuff. They made me leave the room. And when I walked out, I could see both elevators. One opened and Sandy was in it. The other opened and Becky and mom were in it at the
Wow.
same time. And they saw my face and mom just started screaming because she
Oh,
knew.
man.
And so Sandy ran into the room and mom basically kind of collapsed. And so Becky and I stayed with mom and Sandy went in there and it was just his time. And I just remember it being so weird how everything played out because I was the only one, like everybody else had went back up there later that night and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
hadn't. So I was the only one of us that hadn't been back up there, and then I saw him in the morning. I was the only one that did get to see him in the morning, but it was kinda like God gave me that opportunity,
Yeah.
to see him once more, and the fact that he said, "No, I feel better now," just felt to
Yeah.
me like him stepping into heaven. Like, he
Comforting.
flatlined, there was no dramatic, there was nothing. He
Yeah.
was like, he went from breathing fine, talking fine, to just peacefully gone. And
Wow.
I just always felt like literally, like the angel just took him.
Yeah.
So,
That's gotta be
that he
comforting.
was a good one.
Yeah. Sounds like an amazing
Yeah.
man, and
Yeah.
and very fitting considering all your other stories of that's you're the last one there to see that and have that comfort, and
Yeah.
youngest and being one that didn't get to see him as
Yeah.
because of his work schedule, and um yeah, that's special.
Yeah.
Well, Missy, I thank you
Yeah.
for your time
So
to do
he's
this more and get into other aspects of your
all
life.
right.
Tip of the iceberg right now, just talking about your earliest memories, and I can't wait to
Yeah.
continue maybe doing this a little bit more and capturing more eras of your life, if you will.
Yes. All right. That was fun.
All right, thank you.
All right.